Starting. And we are live. And I get to tweet.
Yep, I'll do.
This feels like the live show ritual. Start broadcast, tweet about it, wait for a moment until people arrive.
Right. I'm going to try to pop out the chat here so I can see people chatting.
I very much wish there was a way to see the chat in the control room because it feels very weird, like watching just for the chat side of things.
Yeah, I agree.
And Andrea is here. Hello, Andrea.
Oh, yeah.
You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yes, people are watching now. Oh my gosh. Let's go in alphabetical order. So Bree is first.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bree. I have a channel called Bree Reads Books, and I love science fiction and fantasy, as you might guess. Mostly a science fiction reader.
Joe?
I'm Jay. My channel is one of Jay, which has nothing to do with books, but whatever. I read science fiction, fantasy. Well, it's very heavily science fiction. As of the last few years, like it used to be really heavy fantasy.
Paul?
Oh yeah, I forgot alphabet. Hi, my name is Paul. I used to have a booktube channel at Common Touch of Fantasy, but now it's just a blog, commontouchoffantasy.com, and you can follow me at PaulCTOF at very random social media things. I don't know. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm Rachel. This is my channel, Colonati, that we're on right now. And I read a lot of science fiction and a smaller bit of fantasy these days. So that's pretty much it. And today we are going to talk about Hugo nominees. Cue excitement.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited about it. That day when they were nominated, I refreshed the pages like nonstop. I was so excited.
Yep.
I had been at the science fiction bookstore literally not 10 minutes before they were announced. And as I got in the car and left, I was like, what am I doing? They're going to announce the Hugo nominees right now. I should turn back.
And it will be very exciting for all of us because all of us are attending Worldcon this year. So we will be there at the ceremony when they hand out the Hugo rockets.
Yeah, I'm so super happy that a great list is on here for my first Worldcon ever. So I'm really excited about that.
My first comment about the shortlist this year is that it feels like the Hugo Awards are kind of back to usual business. There have been some disruptions in recent years, and last year's nominees were so exciting because it was a really great list in spite of some of the political issues going on in the community. And this year it's like, it's just normal and it's great.
It's super nice to have the upset be gone.
Yeah, though maybe I hope nothing else happens. I'm nervous about it. What can I say? So how do we want to do this? Do we just want to go through the categories from top to bottom and talk about it, or do we have any other general thoughts about the shortlist overall?
I'm just generally pretty pleased with the shortlist. I think that is a good summary of my overall thoughts. So I have no objections to going through. Do we want to start at kind of the bottom?
Oh, keep like the big categories to later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. My general thought though about the whole list is just how much orbit has become such a driving force now in science fiction. It's just really surprising to me because it doesn't even seem like that long ago when you started to see orbit books at the bookstore.
Really? Orbit?
Well, I mean, for me, I don't have as much knowledge about it as you guys, but
well, I haven't been following it for that long, so I'm not really sure, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the one that stands out is, of course, Tor.com.
Yeah.
Especially in the novellas category. Yeah. Okay. Well, do we want to start with the categories that are not actually Hugo Awards, but everybody just treats them like Hugo Awards? We can start with the new one, what is it technically called right now? The World Science Fiction Society Award for Best Young Adult Book, which I believe will eventually become the Lodestar Award. It hasn't been ratified yet, but this is the first year that a Worldcon has opted to go for it. So, thoughts on this category?
I'm super
Who nominated?
I'm super excited for this category. It's one that I think is really long overdue. I think there's a lot of really good YA that doesn't get acknowledged, specifically because I think a lot of SFF readers tend to read adult, right? Especially in the older ages. And I'm super excited to see a core 4, of course, there. I'm excited to see Pullman. I thought that his new book was a lot of fun. I haven't read Sarah Reese Brennan's. I have it downstairs in my TBR. So that was one I had my eye on because I think she and Shannon McGuire wrote Into the Drowning Deep and In Other Lands kind of in tandem with one another. I know that they were talking back and forth about how to do mermaids. And then I'm really looking forward to Hardinge because I've found that I really like Frances Hardinge.
Yeah, it has A Skin Full of Shadows. It's been published in the US, right?
It would have to be, I think, eligible.
I think it would be eligible in 2 separate years. Like if it's published in the UK in 1 year and then in the US the second year, it's eligible again, I think. So
it says that Abrams is its US publisher.
Oh yeah. It must be out then. I'm used to Harding having a really odd publication schedule here in the US. So yeah, that is one I want to read as well. I've heard such great things about all of her books, actually. So I haven't read anything in this category, unfortunately. I did nominate a few, which might be kind of bad because I hadn't read them, but I did nominate Akata Warrior, and I'm not at all surprised to see it there. And I nominated In Other Lands because I really, really want to read it. And I know, yeah, Paul, you've read one on this list. I want to know what you think.
I've read The Art of Starving by Sam J. Miller. I like Sam J. Miller's writing quite a bit. I read a lot of his short stories. And, it's a very divisive book because it deals with eating disorders and gaining powers through an eating disorder. But the way he handles it is so well done. And you can tell that he uses his own experience as a teenager growing up, a gay teenager, and uses that experience to write this book. And I thought it was really well done. It was something that I nominated. And I thought it was just a great book. I tried to read In Other Lands earlier in the year. I only made it to like maybe, I don't know, page 100 or something. I just wasn't feeling it at the moment. It wasn't anything with the book. It's just I was reading a lot of YA at the time, and so I just wasn't feeling it. Frances Hardinge, having her up there is great because I think she's one of the better YA writers. She doesn't write like a YA writer. She writes like, a well researched, and very intelligent individual. And it reads like an adult book, but it just has protagonists that are younger. And I haven't read the Core 4 books yet. I would like to. And I have never read a T. Kingfisher, but I think this is a very strong list. The only thing that's missing from this I nominated, which I wasn't really sure was actually eligible, was the A Strange Case of Alchemist's Daughter. And I wasn't sure if that was eligible or not in this category by Theodora Goss. So, but I'm pretty happy.
Is that YA or adult?
Well, some places were saying it was YA, others were saying adult. I just threw it in there just in case.
Yeah, I think it's generally falling in adult is what my understanding is. Has anyone read The Lie Tree by Frances Hardinge?
Yes, it was very good.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I haven't read her one that's on the list, but I'm really excited because I really like The Lie Tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was written like something. I mean, she's a British author, and I think a lot of British authors are just better writers overall. That maybe might be by. I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
Well, overall about this category, I just made me respond when I saw it because, as you know, I've never actually read a YA book that I've actually liked. So this was sort of like a YA category. Yeah, this ain't gonna be for me at all. And then when I saw the actual authors in it, I mean, the only author that I actually read something by here that I actually liked was Nadia Corfu. Philip Pullman, I do not like his Dark Materials trilogy. I actually greatly dislike that trilogy. And the others I'm not familiar with. This category is kind of a null category for me. Kind of
One of my favorite things about watching Joe is when he doesn't like something, you have a very distinct, like, Joe doesn't like this face. So I know right away, like, what you're going to say about something when I open up your video, because it's like, you have just like a very expressive face. I do think we should all take this as a challenge in the comments to leave a YA book we think Joe will love. I think that would be fun.
I didn't know I dislike faith, but that's interesting to know.
The one I think you could probably try is the Summer and Orcus one, because that's T. Kingfisher, aka Ursula Vernon, and I have a feeling you might just like her style because it's funny.
Wait, hold the phone. T. Kingfisher is Ursula Vernon?
You didn't know that?
I didn't know this!
Yeah! T. Kingfisher is the pen name she uses for her more adult works that she doesn't want children to find, since she writes.
Makes me so happy.
Yeah, so I have it here, and it is a beautiful book, and things are falling out of it. So yes, this is the one I'm probably most excited to get to. I have it in Akata Warrior on my immediate TBR because I own them, and I'm only allowed to read books that I own this month. So
Now, Akata Warrior is a sequel, right?
I didn't catch that, Paul. What do you say?
Akata Warrior is a sequel, right?
Yes, it is. The first book is Akata Witch.
Okay,
yeah.
So I need to read that then. Okay.
So there were some questions in the chat. Let's see here. Mark asked, did the puppies actually try to get books on the ballot this year? I don't think that there was a well-organized, concerted effort to do that. It was so fractured that it didn't have any effect. And Kelsey asks, does anyone know if middle grade is technically eligible in this new YA category? I do not know the answer to that.
I would guess that it counts in there, but I think it's probably in the kind of same realm as YA used to count. Like, YA still technically counts for best novel, where you probably won't see a ton of it. Just my guess. I have to put my cat in the other room. Hold on.
Yeah, I imagine there are some middle grade books that are kind of on that cusp between children's and YA, and they would be allowed into the category, unless there's a very strict audience age requirement for that.
I would imagine it's allowed. Did you guys nominate anything in this category that didn't make it?
I nominated Jane Unlimited by Kristen Cashore because it's another one I really want to read. And I think it made the Andre Norton Award category, which is associated with the Nebula Award. But it didn't make it, and that slightly surprised me.
I might pull up the Nebula Award list for the Andre Norton stuff to see what was on there.
Oh
Yeah.
Good,
Be interesting what the crossover is. So, do we want to move on to the Campbell Award next?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Excited dance for Catherine Arden.
Yeah,
I am so pleased about this category overall, probably because 4 of my 5 nominations made it, but it's such an interesting list this year of people.
Is Catherine Arden the favorite here? I think so.
I could see Rivers Solomon doing really, really well. Her Unkindness of Ghosts was like a big hit.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this category probably comes down to Catherine Arden and Veena Jimin Prasad, just for the buzz. Bear and the Nightingale has been so immensely popular. Yeah. But Prasad has at least 2 stories that have been nominated for the Nebulas and the Hugos this year, which is impressive. I should actually look at the categories, see what it is in here.
She did the fandom for robots.
Yeah, she has 2 Hugo nominations because A Series of Stakes is nominated in Best Novelette and Fandom for Robots in Short Story. So I have to say that she's probably going to be my top pick in this category. It's really hard to pick, of course, but I was so impressed by both of those stories.
Yeah, so the people that are nominated for the Campbell are Catherine Arden, Sarah Kuhn, Jeanette Ng, Veena Jimin Prasad, Rebecca Rowanhorse, and Rivers Solomon. Sarah Kuhn, the Heroine Complex. Bree, I know you've read that. Is that worthy?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I don't know that I think it's maybe best new novelist worthy. It's a ton of fun, but it feels a lot like reading a junk food book, like almost like an airport book. I think I haven't read Jeanette Ng yet, but it's like on my next list. Like it's literally sitting on my desk so that I can read it over work. So we'll see how I feel about her. I know a lot of people have really liked her stuff.
What's the work by her that you're going to read?
Under the Pendulum Sun.
Oh, right. Yes.
That's a really cool cover. I just looked it up right now.
Yeah, I remember it because of the cover.
Yeah.
There's a novella by her, I think, that keeps being recommended to me on Amazon. I think it's like Werewolves in Space. I'm not a big werewolf fan, but apparently Amazon's algorithm thinks I'm going to really love it.
What do you think, Joe?
I'm never really sure. I didn't nominate anybody in this myself because I'm never sure how new authors are. So I'm just like, does this person qualify? I don't really know. And so I'll probably vote, but for nominations, no. I just never know who's who. Please.
Yeah, I agree. I have a huge problem figuring out who's eligible each year. And like I did my recommendations video, and then people were like, like 3 of the people you mentioned aren't even eligible anymore. Oops. There is a website where you can go look up the list, and clearly I need to take my own advice.
Yeah, I think Lady Business generally has a really good database of who's eligible for everything.
Mm-hmm. Is that Renee's spreadsheet of doom?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really helpful. Yeah.
Are we feeling comfortable going to best series?
Yes.
Before we go to that, KB Wagers, was she eligible for the Campbell? Do you guys know?
No.
Okay. All right, never mind.
Okay, best series. This is The Books of the Raksura by Martha Wells, The Divine Cities by Robert Jackson Bennett, The Encrypted series by Shauna McGuire, The Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan, The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, and The World of the Five Gods by Lois McMaster Bujold. So number one, I was really surprised to see the Books of the Rexura on this list. I had vaguely heard of it before, but I had no idea it was popular enough to make it to the list. But now I'm very intrigued.
It was pretty dark horse candidate. I'm a little surprised also to see The Divine Cities by Robert Jackson Bennett, even though I personally really enjoy his series. It's never been the one that seems like it gets a lot of buzz.
Yeah, I know Brock is probably really happy that Bennett got nominated in this category because he really likes his books.
Oh yeah, if you haven't read his Divine Cities books, you absolutely need to.
I wonder if this might be a case. I feel like in some ways this category might turn into nominate an entire series that you wouldn't necessarily have nominated the individual books.
Yeah,
but as a whole, they are worthy of some sort of recognition. And that's sort of how I felt about it. Like, I nominated the Vlad Taltos series. I wouldn't actually not nominate any of the individual books, but it is just such a long-running great series overall. Just that's how I feel about it. So, and then there's Encrypted by Shauna McGuire. Is anybody surprised because it's Shauna McGuire?
No, not at all surprised.
Well, I'm a little surprised that the Rosemary and Rue wouldn't be nominated over Encrypted. I'm not sure if there was a release of that last year or not, but I always thought the Rosemary and Rue series was a little bit more popular than Encrypted.
I would guess.
Go ahead.
Oh, I would guess that people are waiting because there's a long chance. There's a big chance that there will be continuing books in that series.
Good point. So do you think people are really leaning towards series that have ended that last year, possibly?
I think that's probably one of the criteria that people apply to their list. They're like, this is the one and only time I can nominate this particular series because it's ended now. And so that might prioritize a lot of those nominations, take up a lot of space on people's ballots.
That makes sense.
I would, somebody might have to correct me on this, but I think there might be something in the rules for this particular category that some series become ineligible, maybe if they've been nominated before or if they've won before. And I think people are so uncertain about the criteria and the eligibility rules here that they might just skip renominating things because they think it might not be eligible. I mean, I'm not even clear on that.
I'm not surprised to see Bujold on here, especially the Five Gods.
Mm-hmm. Some of the individual novellas in that have made this eligible have been nominated in the novella category before. So, quick question from the chat. Was the N.K. Jemisin series eligible? Yes, Broken Earth was eligible, but I believe Jemisin asked people to not nominate it in Best Series if they were going to nominate The Stone Sky in novel. She didn't want to take up 2 slots.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I did nominate her, and I didn't know that, though. I did nominate the Stormlight Archive just because I needed a 5th thing to nominate. And I mean, I'm happy it's there, but like someone said in chat, it might seem a little early for it to be nominated since it's only on book 3 and it's supposed to be like a 10-book series.
10 books?
Yeah, he's going to be really old when he finishes that.
I mean, it's Sanderson, so.
Yeah.
How many pages of story is that going to end up being? Like 15,000 pages or something?
Yeah. I am happy to see Marie Brennan on there. I think she deserves recognition. She hasn't been able to have anything on any of the lists, I don't think, in recent years. So I'm happy to see her on there. And yeah. And the Martha Wells thing, like you were saying, that was definitely a big surprise. I guess people are just rediscovering her work because of the Murderbot series.
I think a lot of people read All Systems Red and then immediately jumped to her backlist while they're waiting for more Murderbot. Mark said he was sad to not see de Baudard's Shuya series on there. I hadn't thought about that, but that's interesting. Maybe it's because most of that series is short fiction, like short stories, novelettes, a couple of novellas. It might be difficult to determine if it meets the word length criteria because of that.
I nominated Robin Hobb in this category, of course, the Fitz and Full trilogy, and it's finishing out Fitz's story. And I nominated The Craft Sequence by Max Gladstone. I was hoping that he might get some recognition for his work.
Mm-hmm.
I like the KB Wagers trilogy as well. I nominated that. So
I think that was one of my nominations as well because it was concluded and it's such a fun series.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
Well, my other one was Joel because which I blame you for, Rachel, because considering that I never heard of Joel 2 years ago, and now I've read in just over 12 months. I've read what 25 books by her in just over a year.
You are a reading machine. It took me like 3 years to read the Vorkosigan saga.
I won't be surprised if Bujold gets my vote as much as I like The Divine Cities and some of the other nominations. It's like so iconic.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I know I'll make an effort to read the last 2 books in the Memoirs of Lady Trent series because that one I might want to vote higher up on my ballot. So we want to move on to some of the fan categories now. We have Best Fan Artist, Geneva Benton, Grace P. Fong, Maya Hato, Lickane or M. Sereno, Spring Schoenhuth, and Steve Stiles. I don't have much to say for this category. I nominated Lickane. I do every year. And I think that's pretty much it for me.
I nominated Grace Fong. I liked her work.
What has she done? Because I don't recognize her name.
I believe she's well, I'll be honest, I researched the names and looked at the art, and then that was pretty much it. But I think she does covers for tour, I believe. Okay.
I want to Google this. I'm curious.
Oh no, she does. No, maybe I was wrong. Yeah, I was wrong. She just does normal artwork.
Ooh, she has a Tumblr site. That is cool. I know there is a Tumblr site that every year they go through a bunch of fan artists to recommend them before Hugo nominations. I did not check it out this year, but it's been incredibly helpful in the past. So if somebody wants to dig that up for future nominations, it's really helpful. But otherwise, I find it really difficult to keep up on fan artist stuff. Fan writers, I'm aware of blogs, but artists, not so much, I guess.
Yeah, I wish I keep trying to be better about like following people on Instagram and stuff. Instagram is for me a lot easier than going to say Tumblr. But I feel like I can never keep up with fan art.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of wait until people are talking about nominations and then I see what they do then,
Yep. Best fan writer now? The very oddly named Chemestros Philapton, which is a pen name.
Okay.
Nobody knows who Chemestros actually is. Sarah Gailey, Mike Glyer, who's from File 770, Foz Meadows, Charles Pesur, and Bogi Takash.
Not particularly surprised by any of these.
No. The only one on this I don't recognize is Charles Pesur, but I've heard his name more recently. Something to do with rocket stack rank. Anyway. But yeah, I'm actually really pleased to see Bogi Takash on there. I don't read their stuff regularly, but I'm aware of how vocal they are about I would say like genderqueer authors and neuroatypical disability and stuff, and promoting that in science fiction and fantasy and authors and stuff. So I was very pleased about that one.
I was happy to see Sarah Gailey in this. I like her posts on Tor. I was very surprised that Liz Burke did not make it on this. I love Liz Burke's posts on Tor.com.
And she was nominated in the Best Related Work category, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, Sleeping with Monsters, which is, I think, a collection of her reviews.
Yeah, it's something that she does on Tor. That's like her main thing. And I enjoy reading her stuff.
I think I read her stuff occasionally because she writes for Locus magazine as well. And I read that review column. So
I wouldn't be surprised if she made long list, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
And I also nominated Nina Allen. She has some decent posts and stuff.
I'm ashamed to say that I did not realize that Nina Allen was even eligible as a fan writer until after nominations were over. I loved her short fiction, and I did not know she was eligible for that. I would have nominated her if I'd known. Is anybody here familiar with Chemestros Philapton?
No.
No? Okay.
I
don't know.
I want to be, though, because of that name. I really want to.
Okay. Well, best fan cast. This is the category that booktubers are technically eligible for, and someday a booktuber will make it in this category, and we will all rejoice.
That's another one where I'm going to be really interested to see the long list.
Yes.
I'm counting on everybody who watches this kind of stuff to like come through for booktube. If Rachel, if you don't make it one of these upcoming years, I'm going to be like super, super disappointed in my heart.
My money is on Thomas from SFF 180. I think he'll be the first.
That might be a thing. Other than that, I don't feel like there's anything surprising about Fancast except for maybe that Tea and Jeopardy wasn't on it this year.
Yeah, the nominees are Coode Street, Ditch Diggers, Fangirl Happy Hour, Galactic Suburbia, Sword and Laser, and Verity. And I was really surprised at the omission of Tea and Jeopardy. I feel like Verity and Sword and Laser have been nominated before, but maybe not last year, and they've come back on the list.
Yeah. Sword and Laser hasn't been nominated in a while, and so they're probably really happy that they're nominated again. I listened to them. I actually did vote for them because they're just fun people to listen to.
Yeah.
Weren't they nominated like 2 years ago, though, I thought? Maybe I'm thinking of further back.
So, yeah, they've been nominated before.
So I did nominate you, Rachel, and I agree with Bree. You will be on the list one day, and hopefully it's sooner than later. And I did nominate Thomas as well. I think you guys are really making spectacular content. So
yeah, I nominated Thomas, SFF 180, and Elizabeth from Books and Pieces. Yeah. And I think I nominated Claire as well. Because my regular nominations are just Coode Street, which makes it every year, I think, and Tea and Jeopardy. So I wish I could say that I listen to more podcasts, but I've actually stopped listening to a bunch of them. I used to listen to Galactic Suburbia regularly, and I don't anymore. And I feel like a terrible fan for admitting that.
I was a pretty big fan of Fangirl Happy Hour and Galactic Suburbia last year. I listened to like every single podcast they had last year, and they definitely deserve to be on there. Like you said, Tea and Jeopardy, I think we talked about it before. It might have been an issue of episodes, how many episodes and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they had enough to qualify, but they weren't as active before. So, and I'm not surprised at all to see Ditch Diggers on this. That's by Mur Lafferty and Matt Wallace. And Matt Wallace is the author of the Scene du Jour novella series from Tor.com. And I always feel like I should check out this podcast more frequently to listen to him talk after reading some of those novellas because they're hilarious and messed up.
I I've always been hesitant to pick up the Cindy Jour novellas because they, on their face at least, they seem like something I wouldn't enjoy, but everyone seems to love them.
I think Joe can attest to enjoying them. He picked them up recently.
Yeah. I've read two March, two February, 2 January, and now the 7th one is out this week, is it? Was it in 2 weeks on, whenever?
I can't remember. I thought it was a May release, but yeah, he's farther ahead than I am.
Yeah, I read the first one. A lot of fun.
Yeah. I admit I didn't think I was going to love them at first either, but after the first one, it's just like the humor. I completely got it for some reason. Yeah.
Watching Claire do her tour.com surprise unboxing definitely also made me want to pick them up.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Ditch Diggers is about their life in reading, right? They're talking about their struggles and stuff in reading, or is it something else?
I think it's a writing podcast. And hey, Claire is in the chat, and I think she listens to it regularly, so maybe she can chime in and tell us what it is. I think it's mainly advice to writers, and maybe kind of an evolution from Mur Lafferty's I Should Be Writing podcast, which was a perennial favorite in this category for a long time. But yeah, I think that one is just really popular with writers and fans who are interested in kind of the behind the scenes of the publishing industry and what it's like for writers and stuff. I listened to a couple of episodes and I thought they were really good, but I'm not an aspiring writer, so it wasn't quite my thing.
Are we good talking about fanzine? Again, I feel like there's not a ton that I'm terribly surprised to see on here. I mean, File 770, I think, makes it like every year.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to just read the nominees?
We have File 770, Galactic Journey, Journey Planet, Nerds of a Feather Flock Together, Rocket Stack Rank, and SF Blue Stocking, which is one I don't think I've ever heard of, but that's not surprising.
Does anybody know what Journey Planet is?
No.
I feel like I should know what that is.
Edited by Team Journey Planet.
Perhaps they are anonymous.
Yeah. I voted for a Rocket Stack rank in this.
Claire is shouting out SF Blue Stocking in the chat in all caps, so it must be exciting.
Type quickly and tell us what it is. And yeah, I nominated File 770 in this category. I actually read it regularly, and so that's why I know something about it. And I always feel like I should nominate Nerds of a Feather, but I actually only read it once a year. I check up on their 4-part Hugo nominee recommendations series every year. It's like my first thing I go to, and then I feel bad for forgetting about it for the rest of the year.
SF Blue Stocking is apparently feminist media analysis, which sounds interesting. Like that probably has a lot of interesting stuff, actually.
And yes, she points out in the chat, Rocket Stack Rank has recently been embroiled in some community discussions about how their reviewers have been talking about authors and characters and stuff. There's been some transphobic stuff that's come up, and I've been a little disappointed to hear that. I found it's great as an aggregation site for reviews of short fiction, so it's very handy, but they've had some controversies recently, which is disappointing.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, and Mark points out, were you about to say?
Yeah.
Marcus pointed out that File 770 is really great for being like, what the hell is this Twitter rage about right now? The one time I got shouted out by File 770 during the second year of the puppies, which was really exciting, and I then got all of the comments from everyone. But yeah, no, they are definitely up on the gossip and controversy in science fiction and fantasy.
There's got to be at least one place you can go for all that.
Yeah, sometimes I don't even read the articles. I just look at the comments.
Yeah.
You're never supposed to read the comments, Paul. Never read the comments.
I know, but yeah.
No, the regular commenters on File 770 are really interesting, and I love the people who just drop in on any post to leave their full-length book reviews. Like, it's that kind of community where you can do that and nobody's annoyed by it. You know, we're all avid SF readers, so of course we're up for a book review whenever you want to give it to us. Yep.
And I'm low key trying to figure out who people are with their handles and stuff in the comments. Like, who's that person?
Yep.
Are we good to talk semi-prosy?
Yes. You want to go over that one?
Sure. In semi-prosy, we have Beneath Ceaseless Skies, The Book Smugglers, Escape Pod, Fireside Magazine, Strange Horizons, and of course, Uncanny. Strange Horizons, Uncanny, The Book Smugglers, and Beneath Ceaseless Skies. I think we're all on the ballot last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
I voted for Uncanny and The Book Smugglers. The others, I don't really read enough from them to really have an opinion on.
Yeah. I nominated Uncanny, and I also nominated Strange Horizons and Fireside Magazine because I've read enough stories from them. Fireside, isn't Fireside fiction? Like, it has two names. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah. I'm always pleasantly surprised at how many stories they have on recommended lists at the end of the year, and I always think to myself I should like read that regularly. They've been doing really great work, and I believe Escape Pod is a podcast semi-prosine, and I think it's the first time that an audio semi-prosine has ever been nominated.
That's exciting.
That is exciting. I think the only one that I would think would be also in rotation is, of course, Clark's World. They are regularly on and off.
Clark's World is no longer a semi-prosine.
And that explains the things.
Yep. Actually, Neil Clark is the editor of Clark's World. He's the one who runs the semi-prosine directory, which is where you can go to figure out whether something is eligible or not. And there are a bunch like Clark's World and Lightspeed that people keep nominating them in semi-prosine, even though they've been pro for quite a while. So
I'm sure that they're used to switching that over, though.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Joe, did you nominate anything in this category?
I just nominated the bottom two, Strange Horizons and Uncanny.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty obvious I'm going to nominate Uncanny because that's one of the ones I've been subscribed to on and off for the last 2.5 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say
Strange
Uncanny.
Horizons, I sort of check it occasionally on and off.
Yeah. The one that I nominated here that I kind of wish had made it is Samovar, but I'm not sure if it's actually counted as a separate magazine from Strange Horizons. It's kind of like their sister quarterly semi-prosine, which is dedicated to SF in translation. And this was the first time they were eligible, and I thought that would have been great to make it to the short list. We'll see maybe if it's on the long list.
Yeah, I nominated Uncanny, but I do that every year. I think their stuff is just so fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I haven't been reading short fiction and paying attention for more than like 3 years, but I feel like Uncanny is that really rare magazine that's launched and extremely popular right out of the gate. I have this impression that launching SFF short fiction magazines is pretty difficult to do, especially to make them sustainable, and Uncanny is just a wild success story.
Both of the Thomases were editing other stuff beforehand, so they had a bit of a following and had been nominated in other Hugo categories before. So I'm not actually terribly surprised, because I think it is one of those rare cases of having the clout to do so, and then having the kind of energy and mission statement, because they're very clearly a magazine with an idea of how they want to impact the world that I think was very effective.
Yeah, yeah. And with all that experience, I think they edited Apex for a couple of years before they went to Uncanny. I think they specifically left Apex to launch Uncanny. And I feel like they just have the business side of it. They know how this stuff works economically, so they did it the right way. A question from the chat: is Locus eligible and not nominated? Locus is no longer eligible for any of the categories in the Hugo Awards. I believe that there was a pro magazine category, or pro and semi-prozine was combined at some point. So Locus has racked up like maybe dozens of nominations and Hugo Awards, but they are not eligible for anything anymore because they're a professional magazine. So, and for people who don't know what Locus Magazine is, it is basically the it's the professional magazine of the science fiction, fantasy, and horror field. So it's kind of aimed at writers and publishers and stuff like that. So, okay, we want to move on to Best Professional Artist. Okay. The nominees in this one are Galen Dara, Kathleen Jennings, Bastien Lecouf de Harm, Victor Nye, John Picacio, and Asana Takeda. I actually have opinions in this category, but I'll let somebody else go first.
I'm happy Sonia Takeda's on there. I love her stuff on Monstrous. It's so gorgeous, you know.
Oh, it is. It's just, it's luscious, man.
Yeah, her color design and like composition are fantastic.
Yeah.
None of the people I nominated made it, so.
Who did you nominate though? Who didn't make it?
Well, I nominated Richard Anderson. I always like his covers.
Yes, I love his covers.
Yeah, and Cliff Nielsen did the Emma Newman novellas. I thought those were really nice.
Oh.
Cynthia Shepard. Someone called Fort, F-O-R-T. I nominated them. It basically, once again, you know, Googling before nominating, finding with the list, looking at their covers, what they did, and finding the ones I like the most.
Yeah.
But, you know, having Kathleen Jennings is pretty good. I'm gonna butcher his name, but the guy that's actually the guest of honor at WorldCon, John, isn't it? John?
Oh, John Picacio or Picacio.
Isn't he a guest of honor at the WorldCon? Or is that someone else am I thinking of?
No, I think he is.
Yeah.
This is embarrassing. I can't remember.
Someone has pointed out in the comments that Dom had the Good Kind controversy happen I think that was just a couple weeks ago, where Terry Goodkind like went off on Twitter about how he didn't like the cover design for his work, and Twitter rallied and was like, yeah, no, this is a great cover.
That controversy was just so professionally embarrassing.
It's like when Anne Rice went off on people who were reviewing her books on Amazon. Like, what are you doing with your time and energy? That like this is what you decide you want to do with your day.
Yeah, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And my library just deleted like 3 Terry Goodkind books, so they're really not being read anymore. So. Anyway.
Yes, John Picacio is art guest of honor at WorldCon this year. So.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if he was already pre-invited. So.
Did I see a kitty? It's Soren.
It is Soren. His second adoptiversary was yesterday, so he's not sure why he was spoiled yesterday and not today.
It's been 2 years already. Wow.
It's been 2 years already. I know. I had that moment. I was like, oh my god. So yes, I'm trying to manage him off of the table, but he was kind of meowing really loud in the bathroom where I put him. So it's a lose-lose situation right now.
We can always use more cats on the live show, you know. So I nominate Galen Dara every year in the professional artist category, her and Julie Dillon. And Julie Dillon is the very odd omission from the shortlist this year. I mean, I think she's been on every shortlist I've ever seen in recent years.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason. And Victo Nye.
Tell us your opinions, Rachel. Tell us your opinions.
I am holding out for the day when Victo Nye actually wins a Hugo. Like, now that she's being nominated, I'm like, why can't you just give her a Hugo Award? She's just stunning artwork, and she does like the best art for a lot of the Tor.com short stories. And she did the Amberlow cover, that book by Laura Elena Donnelly. It was just, it's beautiful. It's like the inside of my brain right there.
Yeah, it came in to the library this last week because I had a hold on it. Like everybody I worked with was like, "Oh, what is that book? What is that?" Just because of the cover.
Mm-hmm. And then they changed the cover design for the second book.
Terrible. I hate that.
Which means Subterranean Press should release collector's editions of the series as it comes out and hire Victo Nye to do special covers. I would pay money for this, but it's never going to happen.
Claire is pointing out that Julie Dillon won last year, so that might be why she's not on the short list this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I could see that being the reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize Victo Nye did so many of the Tor.com short story art, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what's the gender of Victo? Is it a guy?
It's a woman.
It's a woman. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have anything more for this category. Do you guys?
Yeah. No, I'm good.
Okay. So now we're getting into the editor categories. Best editor long form is next on my list. Sheila Gilbert, Joe Monty, Diana M. Foe, Devi Pillai, Miriam Weinberg, and Nava Wolf.
Nava Wolf!
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wolf is at Saga Press.
Yeah.
And I've seen her name on so many things in recent years. So
yeah, the Starlit Wood anthology was one that she had helped edit, and it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Nava Wolf. I also have a crush on her probably, but I think she does great work with Saga.
I can empathize. I also have a crush on Nava Wolf. When Claire and I roomed together in Helsinki's Worldcon, and Nava Wolf was like 4 doors down, and the first thing I said to her when we got into our room when I saw Nava was like, Nava Wolf is 4 doors down from us.
Awesome. I think Miriam Weinberg is from Tor. I think. And Devi Pillai, she is no longer at Orbit. She did edit 6 Weeks, and that is totally why I nominated her. I don't remember where she's moved on to, but she's not at Orbit anymore. So. I don't recognize Diana M. Foe's name, and Joe Monty I think is Bane. Not surprised there, and
I do wish that they would put a couple of works in cross-reference for editors on these sheets, because I feel like sometimes you recognize the work before you recognize who edited it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
This is my struggle with this category is I usually go through my best novel nominees and I look up in the acknowledgement sections if the editor's been mentioned, because unless it's Tor, it's not listed on the copyright page as far as I know. but then it's like you can't just nominate them for one work. They have to have 4 qualifying works from the previous year, and I have no idea where to find that out. So this is why I just sort of slap nominees in this category, like just type something in and hope a few of them stick.
Right. And Ply is actually at Tor now.
Oh,
yeah.
And Claire says Monty is Saga. Okay.
So not surprising that Saga, Orbit, and Tor would be taking over
exactly
in this area. Especially because I think the only other like real name recognition editors I think are all in short form, like the Thomases and Neil Clark and stuff like that. And surprisingly, I want to say surprisingly that they don't quite qualify, because I would imagine some of the specialties hit the word blank qualification, but I'm not really familiar with the rules for editors as much as for other stuff.
Yeah, I can figure out a short form editor pretty easily, but long form is difficult. The one who's not in long form is Patrick Nielsen Hayden, who is a long time editor at Tor. He's definitely eligible. But
they were guests of honor last year.
They were guests. He and his wife, who I think is also an editor at Tor, were at the 2016 Worldcon. They were guests of honor there. Yeah. Okay, short form editor.
We've got John Joseph Adams, Neil Clark, Lee Harris, Jonathan Strahan, Lynn and Michael Thomas, and Sheila Williams. The Thomases have shown up for the last like 3 or 4 years, basically since Uncanny has started. Clark, not surprising. I think Lee Harris makes it on just about every couple years.
Yeah. I'm happy to see John Joseph Adams on here. I think he's doing great work with Lightspeed.
Yeah. Lee Harris, I don't remember all the editing he does, but he's possibly eligible in this category because of his work with Tor. I think he's one of their editors for the Tor short fiction.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And Jonathan Strahan as well, though Strahan edits a lot of anthologies, which are also counted towards the short fiction qualifying pieces. He's done a long-running series of anthologies for Solaris books, the Infinity Project, which is now done. So it'll be interesting to see what he does next for anthologies. But yeah.
It's difficult for me not to have him as a favorite for me, because I listen to Code Street all the time, and he talks about his stuff a lot, and I just like, respect the guy so much.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
This one's gonna be close though. These are amazing editors.
And apparently I'm wrong about Lee Harris being nominated before. I guess this is the first time. I must just recognize the name so much from Tor.com, because I think that I see that. I mean, the Tor short fiction I recognize his name from.
And the other one on this list, Sheila Williams, I believe she's the editor of Asimov's.
Fun fact: the only print magazine that I have a subscription to
is Asimov's.
Yeah, they get sent to my house like every couple months or whatever, whenever it comes out.
I recently subscribed because they had a really fantastic like $5 deal on Amazon for a year.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah. So I hopefully will get back into reading that. I started reading it in 2016, and then I just wasn't reading it regularly enough, so I canceled. But I always feel like every year there are a bunch of recommendations from Asimov's, and I can't read them because they're basically behind a paywall, and I'm very frustrated by that. But overall, I feel like the short form category for editor is a lot of longtime favorites that have been in this category repeatedly, and I'm not surprised by any of them. And mostly glad to see Lee Harris on there, because I think he was the editor who pointed out that it's just extremely rare for non-American editors to be nominated here. Jonathan Strahan is Australian, by the way, so we have 2 non-Americans on this list at least, but yeah, I'm happy to see that. And you know, with online short fiction magazines taking off and becoming more international, I would really hope to see more and more non-American editors be nominated here. It'd be a good direction to go in.
Yeah, definitely. I voted for Anne Vandermeer in this category.
Mm-hmm. So. I think I nominated her last year, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, best dramatic presentation categories. Short form, Black Mirror, the episode called USS Callister. The Deep, which is a song by Clipping. Doctor Who, Twice Upon a Time. And 2 Good Place episodes, Michael's Gambit and The Trolley Problem. And then Star Trek Discovery, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad.
I loved Discovery, but that's the only one I watch. I'm much more of a reader than a film consumer.
I really like The Good Place. I think it's a great show. I think it's one of the freshest new comedies. I did not like last season of Doctor Who that much, so that one.
I have a question on The Good Place.
Yeah.
Are these episodes season 1 or season 2? My list doesn't say.
I'm not sure. I've only watched season 1, so I'm thinking it's the first season. It is. I just Googled Michael's Gambit, and it's the last episode of season 1.
Okay. I just found out my library has season 1 on DVD, and I am going to get that and watch it. It's been recommended to me recently, so.
You don't have your Netflix anymore?
Huh?
You don't have your Netflix anymore?
No, I canceled it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it is driving me to the library. I've discovered my library has a lot of TV shows and movies, so I'm very happy. So, Joe, did you nominate anything in this category or watch anything?
I've been musing about this category as well, because remember, 2 years ago I got rid of my TV. So it's a bit difficult to watch people. I don't have anything to watch it on. And I don't do Netflix or anything, so this category is like a sort of total unknown to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just sort of pretty much ignored this category completely.
So, Bree, if I sign up for CBS All Access now, can I watch the whole season of Discovery? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Bree.
I do a lot of conference calls, so it's best practice. Yeah, you can. If you sign up for CBS All Access, you can now watch all of it. Okay. And I would say you should, because I think it's one of the better composed Star Treks in a very long time. And arguably the best as far as a consistent plot goes.
Yeah, I kind of waited because I didn't want to pay for it for multiple months just to watch one show a week. So now that they're all on there, I'll probably get it now.
I feel like the episode of Star Trek Discovery that got nominated is the one that feels most like a Star Trek episode, and the plot of it reminded me a lot of classic episodes from other Star Trek series, and that's what I nominated.
It's the time loop one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is it is a very fun episode, and yes, it feels much more like a traditional Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. It was also for me the episode where it felt like the main character Michael finally started to let some of her barriers down. Like she suddenly starts having real friendly moments with people, and it was sort of a turning point in the series for how I thought about her. She was more human than Vulcan, I guess, after that point.
My big fantasy for Discovery is that we'll have an episode that's just like Tilly trying to make somebody like happy who's really grouchy. So, like that is my fantasy, is just an episode of her like running around trying to make someone feel better, because that would be a very Star Trek episode.
Yeah. She was one of my favorite characters. Yeah. I loved her. So
I'm surprised Stranger Things wasn't nominated. I guess people weren't as they love season 2 as much as first one. I don't know.
I really liked the new season of Stranger Things.
Yeah, so I was surprised that's not on there, and I'm surprised more Netflix shows aren't on here, to be honest.
Well, I mean, Good Place and Black Mirror, I think, are both on Netflix. That's half of them, but yeah.
I would expect, especially because they're doing what looks to be a bunch of different science fiction or fantasy shows, that we'll see Netflix stuff increasingly often. They're doing a Witcher show soon, so that would probably make it.
I'm enjoying Altered Carbon right now, but it's not for everybody. Definitely.
That'll be eligible next year, right?
Yeah, I'll probably. Yeah, I think it's fun.
Well, if I get Netflix again at the end of the year, I'll probably try watching that. Yeah. So,
folks are pointing out The Handmaid's Tale and The Expanse.
Yeah.
Yes, I am surprised that an episode of The Expanse didn't make it. I did nominate one in that category, and I saw some discussion about maybe why Handmaid's Tale didn't make it to the short list if people didn't view it as science fictional enough or something. I don't know. They could have split the votes. And this is kind of turning into a much more fractured category anyway, as there are more and more TV shows and stuff that people are aware of and have access to. I think it's gonna go the way of like the short fiction categories, where it's a very fractured field, and just a lot of things get bumped off the list.
Yeah, I'm not terribly surprised about Handmaid's Tale because it's so clearly in dystopia and not necessarily as clearly in science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
The Expanse is a little surprising. And LOL at Mark's comment, did people view The Handmaid's Tale as nonfiction?
God, I hope not.
Now, fiction podcasts that would be able to be nominated for short form, correct?
Yes, like shows like Welcome to Night Vale are eligible here.
Okay.
Yeah. And every year, I am surprised that an episode of Welcome to Night Vale doesn't appear on the list. But I wonder if there's just not as much crossover between Night Vale fandom and Hugo nominators and voters. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it gets more popular, because I think that's a type of medium that would really thrive with science fiction lovers. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't really have anything else for this category. I do want to listen to the Clipping song. I was really impressed by their album, which was nominated last year, and it's very refreshing to have something in this category that isn't a TV episode. Okay, long form dramatic presentation, which might be a category that Joe has some opinions on, because I know you've seen some of these movies, or at least I hope you have. Blade Runner 2049. What?
All but one.
All but one.
Same.
Okay, so Blade Runner 2049, Get Out, The Shape of Water, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Thor Ragnarok, and Wonder Woman. So
I'll let you know what to vote for.
Yeah, this one is tough to figure out who I want to actually win, because there's like 4 of them that I really liked. I did not like the new Blade Runner movie at all. It looked really cool, looked amazing, but it was so depressing. But Get Out was amazing. Thor Ragnarok, which I watched last night, was so much fun. And Wonder Woman, it's Wonder Woman. I mean, the amount of cultural hype and people talking about that movie when it came out, it was everywhere, and it was so important. So I'm leaning towards Wonder Woman because it was just such a milestone last year, I felt.
Yeah, I loved Wonder Woman. I loved The Last Jedi. I loved Blade Runner 2049 and The Shape of Water. I also loved Get Out and basically everything on this list. I am partial to The Shape of Water because I'm really big on practical effects, which The Shape of Water does all of like actual monster makeup. And I don't know. I feel like this is one of the few where like I'm not going to be upset at whichever wins.
Yeah.
I recently saw The Shape of Water and I was a little bit weirded out by the story, but it was a very well crafted movie and it was just visually beautiful. I love the way it looked. Wonder Woman will probably get my vote because it is one of the few recent Marvel movies that I really enjoyed. Yep. I would have a really unpopular opinion about Thor Ragnarok, though. I watched it on fast forward because I got really bored. Really bored. And about the minute when Doctor Strange showed up, it was funny. I will give it that. I really liked the jokes and the kind of tone that it took, kind of almost like the fourth wall breaking in some ways. I thought that was really different, but I just got so bored with the storyline. It didn't feel like anything new for the Thor stuff. And I really hate Doctor Strange. I watched the movie with him. Like, I wanted to see it because I really love Benedict Cumberbatch, but God, I hate Doctor Strange.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, Doctor Strange out of all the Marvel is my least favourite of the current Avengers setup. Personally, I think it doesn't work, I don't think, in this current format. But as far as all the others in this one goes, I liked Blade Runner 2049. Actually, I did not the original Blade Runner. Despite the fact I like the Philip K. Dick book that it's based on, but I don't like the original film. I actually hate the original Blade Runner film. I actually think it's one of the worst films I've ever watched, which I know will probably upset people. I actually did like the new film. I mean, I didn't love it, but I thought it's extremely well made.
Yeah.
And the casting was right. Get Out is okay, but it's not my kind of film really, so it's okay. Shape of Water, well, as far as I'm aware, I didn't even realise it was eligible because it's only released in the UK like 4 weeks, 2 months ago this year. So it's a big release. So I didn't even know it was released. But I'm not keen on Del Toro though as a director. I liked Hellboy and everything else he's done. It's just been frankly strange and weird, and I'm not keen on it.
Pan's Labyrinth is so good.
Yeah, I was to say he did Pan's Labyrinth. I haven't seen that, but
Wait, Rachel, you haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth?
I'm afraid it will be too scary for me.
Oh, Rachel. When I see you next, we'll have to sit down and watch it together. I'll hold your hand. It'll be okay.
My library has it, and I keep thinking I should go and pick it up. Maybe I will make myself watch it, but yeah. That's my question about Get Out on this list, because I've heard such good things about it. It sounds very interesting, but I'm afraid that if I watch it, I will just be really, really scared, and I scare easily.
I don't know that I think Get Out is scary so much as it's suspenseful.
Right.
Okay. Maybe I'll try.
It's disturbing. It's not like scary.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I would say I probably expect a lot of votes for Star Wars. I mean, because Star Wars, but also because I think that final Luke Jedi fight scene was fantastic. And also that moment with Holdo when it goes silent. Oh my God.
Joe, did you like the new Star Wars? Was that your thing?
I've watched the new trilogy. They're redoing films just in slightly new ways, vaguely new ways, and I don't know, they're just not working for me that way. I mean, I'm not saying they're not good.
Yeah.
They're just a good Star Wars, good science fiction film rather than, you know, the big Star Wars film, you know, the amazing sort of film that everybody else seems to often think.
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. I understand some of the people's criticisms of it, but I liked it. It's not my favorite in this category, though.
Yeah, I still haven't seen The Last Jedi, but I wouldn't be surprised if something else wins, honestly. There's some really good contenders this year, so.
So, you want to go to Best Graphic Story?
Yeah. I need to take a very quick break, guys. Okay. So I will be back in a moment.
I'll read the things while you're gone, okay?
Yep. Just go ahead without me. I'll be back in a moment.
Okay, so Best Graphic Story, we have Black Bolt, Volume 1, Hard Time. Oh, I didn't know Saladin Ahmed wrote that. Oh, okay, cool. Anyways, B Planet, Volume 2, President B, Kelly Sue DeConnick. Monstrous, Volume 2, The Blood by Margie M. Liu. My Favorite Thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris. Paper Girls, Volume 3 by Brian K. Vaughan. And Saga, Volume 7 by Brian K. Vaughan. So, surprising how much overlap there is with this.
Yeah. I'm super excited to see My Favorite Thing is Monsters on there. I really loved that. The other one I really, really love is Bitch Planet Volume 2. I'm a big fan of The Planet. But the only one I think I haven't read is Black Bolt Volume 1. And that's probably because I mostly, as a general rule of thumb, stay away from Marvel and DC. They tend to not hit the right notes for me as far as comics go, but that's because I'm not a huge superhero comics fan, says the girl with the Wonder Woman tattoo. But I will have to pick it up. I also have to pick up the Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates. So.
Yeah, I really liked the second volume of B Planet 2. Sorry, guys, I don't swear. But that was that. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. I thought that one was much better than Volume 1. I thought, Monstrous is everyone's favorite fantasy right now. I do really want to read My Favorite Thing is Monsters. I tried to read it. I wasn't in the mood at the time to read it, so I put it to the side because I'm a very moody reader. Brian K. Vaughan, I don't know. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry. I don't like Brian K. Vaughan's work.
I mean, I think my problem with Saga right now is that it feels like it's had such a long time of not really knowing what it wants to do with its story anymore.
Yeah.
And so that, for me, it is hard for me to say that this is a good, like any particular trait is good, because it feels like they're all a little wayward.
Someone in chat said that they really like DC's Super Sons. I'll agree with that. I really enjoy Super Sons. It has Damian and John, the kids from Batman and Superman, and it's fun. I read a lot of comics. I nominated the Black Monday Murders in this. Kill or Be Killed, After Death by Scott Snyder. I thought the Kindred graphic novel adaptation was fantastic. And I also nominated Seven to Eternity by Rick Remender.
Yeah, I don't know, Joe and Rachel, if you're particularly big comics readers, are you?
Not at all.
I read
read any in the last year whatsoever. I seem to have an internet problem, so I'm gonna reset my modem. I'm back in about 2 minutes. See if that helps.
Okay. Good luck.
Sounds good. The one that I mean, I'm always going to be a little sad that Descender didn't make it on, because I really love Descender. I think the combination of storytelling and artwork in it is so choice. A little surprised that we don't see anything by Jeff Lemire, because his stuff is really fantastic, subtle fantasy. So stuff like Plutona, which was really good. It's about a group of kids who finds a dead superhero. I'm trying to think of what else Jeff Lemire's doing right now, because he's got a bunch of stuff. He does a lot of the new Hawkeye. He did the newest Hawkeye run, and he's really fantastic.
Yeah, he's actually the artist with Scott Snyder in that After Death graphic work. I thought it was excellent. It was fantastic. But I mean, I haven't read Black Bolt either, so maybe I'll check that out. What do you think, Rachel?
Oh, Black Bolt, I actually want to try. It's the only one on the list that I never heard of before, and has Saladin Ahmed's name on it, and I always mean to read something by him.
Are there any from the BookTube SFF Awards that didn't make it on?
What's the other one? You're an Alien too, or whatever, didn't make it.
Oh yeah, everyone's an alien when you're an alien too. That actually doesn't surprise me. Which, by the way, I read that, and it is just the most existentially driven, like, sad webcomic. It has a hopeful ending, but it's like, oh, wow, let's question the nature of literally everything.
I haven't read past volume 1 of Paper Girls. Does it get better?
There is some fundamental flaw in the storytelling in Paper Girls, I think, and I'm not alone in not getting the point of it. I think.
I don't know.
I feel like I like Paper Girls in theory, and I haven't liked it in execution.
Yeah.
But I haven't read the third one yet, so I couldn't say for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read 3 volumes of it now, because I have read the ones nominated here, and I just no. And I'm really surprised that I don't like it, because I've historically enjoyed things by Vaughn, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Vaughn fan, so it doesn't surprise me too much that I don't like it very much. But I can't tell quite what is off about it for me.
I have heard some big Vaughn fans have told me that there is something a bit off about this one. It's unlike many of his other works. It just isn't working as well, and I don't know. If it was going to be a short series, like maybe 5 or 6 volumes, and it had a very definite run, I feel like it would be plotted better, but at the moment it's just taking its own sweet time to get anywhere and set up the story.
Yeah, the idea that Brian K. Vaughan is ever doing like an open-ended series, I feel like it just doesn't work for him. I mean, I have the same problem with Saga, where it's just like, you totally have no clue what you're doing right now.
And for me, Saga works. I really like all the elements of it, but it's the only open-ended comic series that I really have time for. It's like, I'm not going to get into any other series that do that, especially others by Vaughn. I don't have the patience or the bank account to keep buying the trade volumes until infinity, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, comics are expensive.
Yeah.
Joe, welcome back. Yeah, any comments on the comics?
Nope.
Graphic stories, I'm sorry.
I almost never read them. I don't really have. I mean, this is what I always get jealous of with, especially all the Americans I seem to know. You all seem to have really good access to comics in your libraries, and I'm like, yeah, I wish I had that, because my library system is not good. Actually, it's kind of well known for being particularly bad within the UK. So I'm just like, the only way I get graphic novels is buying them, and they're really expensive.
Yeah, prohibitively so sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've definitely seen more people read digital comics overseas. They're much more popular overseas. They're so much cheaper.
And Maya is one of the booktubers I know who reads a lot of comics digitally. You know, she's in Finland, and I don't know if she's still in the chat or not, but I'm curious. She does seem to get quite a few from her library, but also reads a lot digitally. So. Oh, and then there's Bitch Planet Volume 2. I don't know if you guys talked about that when I was gone.
What? That I love Bitch Planet?
The first volume of that did not really work for me, and I'd frankly forgotten about it. I guess there have been some hiatuses for the series or something.
Yeah, it's a total, like, it's a total passion project that Kelly Sue DeConnick does when she has, like, spare time. So it goes on a lot of hiatuses.
Yeah. So I really hope it's going to be in the voters packet because I want to read it. I want to try it once again.
Yeah. I think you'll like the second volume.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah, the second volume is pretty pointed in its kind of storytelling, and its arc is very concise.
Okay. And my neighbors are home and outside, so I'm going to be on mute a lot more now to save you from the children screaming.
It's not that bad. Don't worry about it too much.
It's probably worse on my side because it's incredibly distracting, and I get embarrassed about it.
Which you shouldn't, but that's okay. Are we ready to move on to related work?
Sure.
Paul, you want to read them off for us?
Sure. We have Crash Override by Zoe Quinn, Ian M. Banks by Paul Kincaid, A Light Fuse by Nat Siegeloff, Luminescent Threads, Connections to Octavia Butler by Alexandra Pierce and Mimi Mondell, No Time to Spare, Thinking About What Matters by Ursula K. Le Guin, and Sleeping with Monsters, Readings and Reactions in Science Fiction and Fantasy by Liz Burke. The only one I've read in this was actually The Crash Override by Zoe Quinn, and I liked it. Thought it was eye-opening, the abuse that she went through, and the honesty that she has when telling her story. You know, she says she's not a perfect person, but even though she's not a perfect person, the abuse that she takes is not, it shouldn't happen. So,
yeah. I feel like this year's list is just, for me, a list of all the things that I now want to read that I didn't know existed. I feel like that every year in related work. It's just such a grab bag of everything.
Yeah. I really want to read the Ian M. Banks Modern Masters of Science Fiction work. I would love to read more from that line of. I read the Octavia Butler one, which was nominated last year, and it was really great. And I imagine the one for Banks is just going to be so interesting. Another one I want to read is the Luminescent Threads one, Connections to Octavia Butler. So.
Yes, I want to read that so bad.
I don't remember.
You should let me know when you read that, by the way. I feel like that's one that I'll want to read with somebody else.
Yeah. I want to say that Alexandra Pierce edited the Letters to Tiptree collection.
Yeah.
Maybe, which was also nominated in a previous year. Either her or somebody else who's on the Galactic Suburbia podcast. I can never keep them straight. And I think that Luminescent Threads is kind of the same thing that they did for Tiptree, but this time for Butler. So contributed essays and stuff. It'd be really interesting.
Yeah. I would like to read the Le Guin and the Burke. The other ones I'm not really that interested in.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I've read No Time to Spare by Le Guin, and y'all know I absolutely love Le Guin. I'm not like extremely enthusiastic about this collection winning. I feel guilty saying that, like I'm letting down Le Guin or something, but it wasn't as hard hitting as some of her other collections. Like her, I just blanked on her previous one, which was nominated last year. That was fantastic. This one is a collection of blog posts, and you can definitely tell the blog post format, even though they're presented as mini essays here. And it was much more informal and everyday topics and stuff, which is always interesting. Le Guin can wax poetic and eloquent on any topic, any day of the week, but yeah. So, but I did nominate it, which means I liked it. Does anybody have any interest in the Harlan Ellison one?
I feel like I should read it. Like, I feel like I should read it more than I necessarily want to read it. But I'm not terribly, like, I haven't actually done a deep dive into Harlan Ellison's work.
Me either.
I'm long overdue for that.
Isn't Ellison known for some of his controversial behavior? Am I mixing him up with somebody else?
You're probably right, considering the title. So.
I mean, yeah, I don't think you're wrong. It sounds familiar, but I feel like we always are coming up into like, oh, surprise, this very famous guy in SFF has been like inappropriate with people.
Yeah. He has some really, really famous works, especially short fiction that have won Hugo Awards. And I occasionally think, oh, I should read that because I'm into reading the historical stuff. But then I remember the man. But I feel like every year there is a work like this one, the Provocative Life of Harlan Ellison, in this category. Somebody writes something on one of the big names in the field from years past, and I always feel bad because I have no interest in reading them. It's kind of for a different generation, I think. I think we're kind of seeing that there's different generations of the community are kind of getting pitted against each other in this category now.
Yeah.
So Harlan Ellison and Le Guin here, and Butler, I think of being as much older in the history of the field. And then you have Zoe Quinn, Banks, who I think of as more recent, and then Liz Burke's work is also more recent. So
I struggle with the idea that, like, I'm almost hesitant to read anything that is about an author because I have a hard time appreciating work knowing when an author is like maybe a secret skis ball.
Yeah.
And so like I hate saying it like that. Like, it sounds unpleasant, but it's like the moment you find out about something like Marion Zimmer Bradley, how do you read her work after that?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes I choose ignorance over it, and so that if I ever do read their work, then I won't be colored by the person. But
yeah, like, I'd much rather read a bio of an author after I've read their work.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the short fiction categories. Okay, best short story. The nominees are Carnival 9 by Carolyn Joachim. I don't know how to pronounce that. Clearly Lettered and a Mostly Steady Hand by Fran Wilde. Fandom for Robots by Veena Jimin Prasad. The Martian Obelisk by Linda Nagata. Sun, Moon, Dust by Ursula Vernon. And Welcome to Your Authentic Indian Experience by Rebecca Roanhorse.
I feel like this is one of those categories that I just wait for you and Joe to tell me which ones to read. You guys are so much better at keeping up with the short fiction than I am.
I will start with the one on this list that I completely did not understand, and that is Fran Wilde's story.
Yep.
I just did not get it at all.
I did not understand it at all either. It just went right over my head.
Yeah, strange.
But other than that, everything else on this list was really great. Carnival 9 is a Nebula nominee, as is Welcome to Your Authentic Indian Experience, I think, this year. Possibly also Fandom for Robots. There's a bigger overlap this year than I remember there being. Carnival 9 was bizarre, but really interesting. It's about clockwork people, And for most of it, I didn't get the point of it, because these people have to be wound up, and they only have so many turns per day. So it's basically it's spoon theory. If anybody knows that with chronic illness, how many spoons do you have? How much energy do you have to do things? You have to pace yourself. You know the allotment of your energy every day. So what can you accomplish? And I got to the end of that story, like I started reading it and I just didn't really get the point. It was fantastical and interesting, but what's the point of this? But the end was just, it was kind of devastating, actually, because one of the main characters has a child who is born with basically a defective mechanism, so that they can only be wound up like up to 10 turns, which is just a fraction of what most people can be. Yeah, I really highly recommend that one. It was such a surprise. I would never have read it if I hadn't been nominated for a Nebula Award, but it made it to my nominee list after I read it. Yeah.
Cool. Makes me wonder how many like turns I would have to function in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kingdom for Robots was a lot of fun. I loved that one. I know you guys like that one too, probably.
That's the one where the robot or AI is writing fan fiction and responding to people's comments about it, like it's writing about real robots and things. And yeah, I don't read fan fiction. I'm not really involved in that world, but I was just delighted by that story. It was really fun.
Yeah, there's this great moment where he realizes that when he's writing about the robots, he's writing about the robots in a very specific way, and other people are saying to him, "Hey, why does a robot have to act like that?" And he's like, "Well, I'm the robot, and I act like that." But they're like, "They're not really supposed to. They can act this way and that way." And it's kind of like this cool dichotomy there with how people write and trying to look at themselves outside themselves and stuff.
Mm-hmm. The Martian Obelisk by Nagata, that's one of the Tor.com stories, is slightly bleak. This is about an architect who is remotely building an obelisk on Mars using the remnants of a failed mission to Mars. Like they sent materials ahead and then never actually used them. So they've basically fired up a robot there and are building it. And it's basically a memorial to Earth on Mars, because Earth is kind of dying. And I don't know, it was bleak, but it has that little bit of hope at the end. We strive to do these things to be remembered, and that it's meaningful.
Sounds like something Joe would like.
Actually, I think you would like it, Joe. For some reason I thought you'd read that.
No, but I've heard the name, and actually, as soon as I saw the name of it, the first thing I actually thought of was the author Stephen Baxter, because his books have references to obelisks and Mars in them.
Oh.
Indeed, the story to do with the Mars obelisk. Was it the Moon obelisk? Well, a planet nearby an obelisk. So I'm curious what the short story is. I mean, I know it's not going to be related to that, but it just makes me curious, though.
Yeah. Sun, Moon, Dust by Ursula Vernon. This is about the farm boy who is given his grandmother's sword from her mercenary days, and discovers that the sword has 3 trapped warrior spirits in it. And they're like, "Hey, you've let us out, and now you can go off and be a famous warrior, and we'll help you with all of your adventures." And he's like, "Dudes, I just want to farm."
Yeah. This one is really fun. I like this one a lot. I think if you read a lot of fantasy, you would probably really enjoy this. So I recommend this Ursula Vernon story.
Yeah, it is a very Vernon story as well. If you read her work and you like the very practical, down to earth, like actual earthy people who enjoy gardening and stuff, it's a very practical take on it, and that's why I really enjoy a lot of her work. So, yeah.
The ending was so cute too.
Mm-hmm. And Welcome to Your Authentic Indian Experience by Rebecca Roanhorse. Has anybody else read this one? No?
No, I'm sorry.
I'm going to make a hash of explaining this one. I don't think I completely got it when I read it, but I've read some commentary on the story since then. It's basically a Native American man working at a place that gives virtual Indian life experiences to tourists. And this man contacts him and wants the real Indian experience, and then he starts taking over the narrator's life. And I think it's a commentary on the tourism industry and Native American life, and like commercializing what's essentially a fake tourist experience of Native American life, and the narrator basically being complicit in that. His life gets taken over by a man who is better at being an Indian than him, essentially. It's very subtle, and I guess I didn't quite get it when I was reading it, but it made a lot more sense when I heard some people's commentary on it, and I appreciated it for that. It was a very different subject for an SFF story.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. And I read this, and I nominated Roan Horse for the Campbell Award specifically for that one. It was very well written. So
that sounds a little like is it Mapping the Interior, that is about a boy growing up on a reservation and his family is kind of suffering from the conditions of that?
I haven't read it, but that's the Tor.com novella.
Yeah.
Stephen Graham Jones, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been a couple of really interesting short works that have talked about kind of the experience of specifically Native peoples, which I find very interesting. I grew up actually right next to a reservation.
Okay. Any more commentary on the short story thing? I'll look in the chat. I have neglected that a little bit. Yes, referring back to Harlan Ellison, yes, he did inappropriately touch Connie Willis in public, and yeah.
It's not cool, dude.
Yeah.
I'm surprised she hasn't put that in a story or in a novel somehow.
I think Willis is a classy enough person to just kindly forget that it happened.
Yeah, that's
forgiving if I were in her place, but she's also Connie frickin' Willis, so she can do whatever she wants.
Yeah, it strikes me also that she doesn't necessarily write as much like, this isn't directly related to my personal experience kind of works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kelsey says that she kind of preferred Packing by Vernon, which is under her T. Kingfisher name. I think that was also published in Uncanny. Yep. I will admit that I didn't get that particular one. Packing, it wasn't super memorable, unfortunately. Okay. Novelette. So nominees here are Children of Thorns, Children of Water by Aliette de Bodard, Extracurricular Activities by Yoon-Ha Lee, The Secret Life of Bots by Suzanne Palmer, A Series of Stakes by Veena Jiman Prasad, Small Changes Over Long Periods of Time by K.M. Spara, and Wind Will Rove by Sarah Pinsker.
So the only one that I really enjoyed out of these ones was The Secret Life of Bots. I thought that was a fun story. I thought it was good. I really don't get Bodard's stuff very well. I just don't really, doesn't do anything for me. And I'm hoping that through these talks that I'll figure out what it is about Yoon-Ha Lee that people like so much, because I'm definitely missing something with him as well. So
Yoon-Ha Lee. So Lee has written bucket loads of short stories, and I've only read a little bit of them, but I feel like he actually has this great sense of humor in a lot of his stories that a lot of people may not know about from the Machineries of Empire series. I mean, I think there's actually quite a bit of humor in those books, but it's very subtle sometimes. And extracurricular activities on this list is one that I think the humor was much more obvious. And I absolutely loved it for that. And it's also a Jadao story, and he's like one of my favorite characters. But yeah. De Baudard's story, Children of Thorns, isn't this the tie-in story to her fantasy series that's set in Paris?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that world.
I was only able to get through the first like 50 pages of her first novel in that world, but I've been meaning to give it another shot because I'm very much, if I'm not in the mood for something, I am not going to like it.
Mm-hmm. I did read that book, and I just, her fantasy, I think, is what I don't enjoy quite so much. The world building of that particular world and the world of the story, it just doesn't appeal to me very much. So I really prefer like her science fiction stories set in the Shuya universe. But this story was like also a reprint. I think it was reprinted in Uncanny, and it's very popular. It's got legs, so I'm going to be an odd one out and say I didn't like that one.
Yeah, I didn't care for it either.
Yeah. The Secret Life of Bots, I think a lot of people love this one. It is kind of classic traditional SF, and in fact, it reminds me quite a bit of like old Star Trek stuff. But so you know that in Star Trek, there's usually like at least one episode in a Star Trek series where it's from the viewpoint of just regular crew members, and you get to see the officers from a different perspective. You get to see the running of the ship from just the average grunt's perspective. And that is what this story reminded me of so much, where it's these little worker bots that, you know, the crew just completely ignores, and they're the ones that figure out how to save the day and save humanity, basically. And it was a great twist on that idea, basically.
Yeah, I agree. It was really good.
And then there's a series of Stakes, which I read so long ago, but I was seriously impressed by. I really loved it. I can't remember much of what it's about, but it's the one where they're basically 3D printing meat. And, you know, I'm a vegetarian, basically a vegan, and I still thought it was a very interesting story. Small Changes Over Long Periods of Time by Spara is a trans vampire story, which I thought was interesting when I read it, but I completely forgot about it afterwards.
I read that too. I didn't realize it was the same thing. Yeah.
Yep.
It didn't stay with me either then.
I can see why this one was nominated, because just the plot of that one was really interesting, and the combination of, you know, the vampire myth with trans issues, the melding was really on point, I think.
Oh, now that I think about it, I did kind of like it. Yeah.
And then the last one in this category is Wind Will Rove by Sarah Pinsker, which is in Asimov's. It is publicly available on the author's website, though. So I haven't read it, but it is out there if people want to read it.
To go back to the small changes over a long period of time, didn't the vampirism actually start to reverse the process that the person went through? Isn't that what happened? Like it was this like huge identity type thing?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to reread that, because now that I think about it more, that's much deeper than what I'm thinking. Yeah. Okay.
I agree. I think I'll probably reread it again.
Yeah.
Before voting. So, and speaking of Sarah Pinsker, we want to move on to the novella category because she's nominated in that one too.
Yep.
So, novella, All Systems Red, hallelujah. And then there were None by Sarah Pinsker, Binti Home by Nnedi Okorafor, The Black Tides of Heaven by J.Y. Yang, Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna McGuire, and River of Teeth by Sarah Gailey.
I think of these, the only one I haven't read actually is the Sarah Pinsker one. I mean, and again, it's just striking how Tor.com has just flooded this.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they're bad stories, they're all fantastic stories. But, oof.
There weren't a lot of surprises in this category for me. I was fully expecting Sarah Pinsker's story just because it's been talked about so much, and it was one of the standout novellas of the year for me too. I was surprised that Passing Strange by Ellen Klages is not on this list. I don't know why. Maybe it has a very, very subtle fantasy element, so I think some people might not have considered it SFF enough.
Yeah.
And you know, also the Hugo Awards are a bit heavier on science fiction, so
I think this is one that is going to be really interesting to see the long list for instead, because I'm interested to see what was on here that was not Tor.com.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think Passing Strange, because it was released so early in the year last year, I think that might have had something to do with them not being on there.
There is that as well. Yeah.
But then again, you know, the McGuire was released early last year as well. And I don't know. And the Binti Home was released early too.
Right, but I think McGuire you kind of have to take out of the traditional context because her fangirls are like, the people who love McGuire are going to nominate her for every opportunity they have ever. Yeah. That's just like a thing.
I think McGuire holds the record for most Hugo nominations in a single year. I think she got like 5 one year.
Yeah, so I think that's right.
She gets them nominations.
Yeah, I nominated her twice this year. I thought Dusk or Dawn or Dawn. Wait,
Darker Day.
I never remember the name of that.
Dusk or Dawn.
The one with the 4 D words.
Exactly. That one was really good. I nominated that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, she's already on my short list for this. I think it's this year that Into the Drowning Deep came out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it came out last year.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Oh, well. It would have been on my list if it were eligible.
Yeah, that was fun. It was a good book.
Joe, have you read any of these?
Yep, I read All Systems Red 2 weeks ago, finally. And I really enjoyed that one. I nominated, and then there were none. I didn't like Binti at all. Well, I just thought that was strange. I didn't understand what it was trying to say. So I'm certainly not going to read the other second and third one. Black Tides of Heaven I have over there somewhere, which I'm planning to read at some point. Before America, I'll actually read it before then. The Sean McGuire one, I like the first book. I'm not that bad about reading more books in the series, though. Personally, I mean, I like that book, but I can't see how another book would do anything that I find that interesting. Such. Then River Teeth, read that only extremely recently as well. Start of February, was it? Something. And I read all of them. And I actually nominated that as well. Although I nominated that. I never know the difference between novella and novelette, so I nominated that for novelette. Because I don't actually know. Because I never know. I know it's to do with word codes, though. Not novella and novelette. So I'm just like, well, I nominated for one, and hopefully people, the younger people, they will move it over if it's not quite right. I'm not sure.
I think you make a good point, though. I think with what Bree said and what you're saying, Tor.com is making it easy for people to know what a novella is. So it's easy for them to nominate.
But there have been some instances where people assume that anything by Tor.com publishing is a novella, but some of the things that they brand novellas exceed the word count for the Hugo Awards category. Envy of Angels by Matt Wallace was talked about when that came out, but it's actually too long to be in the novella category.
Was Infomocracy also too long?
I think so. Yeah. So and then Penrick's Mission by Bujold last year, I think it was too long to be considered in a novella, and I think that kind of split the nominees for the novellas she had out that year. So, but I think that point is true that Tor.com has this line of things that are called novellas, and suddenly it's much easier to know if it's a novella or not.
Yeah, like I almost wish that people who publish novellas would do like I don't know, because like Uncanny does occasional novellas, and I wish they'd do some sort of bind up at the end of the year so that I could just look at the novellas list or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Most of the short fiction magazines that are free online, like Uncanny and Lightspeed and Clark's World and Tor.com, their short SF thing, they publish a blog post at the end of the year where they break down everything into the categories, and that's very useful, but it's difficult to find those posts. I spent a lot of time looking for them and couldn't find them again this year. Locus and their recommended reading, they also break down by category, and I know that they specifically look at the word count for Hugo Awards, so that's pretty useful. Novelette has been the middle category. Like, it's easier to know what's a novella and what's a short story, but what's this in between thing? And you know, the term novelette isn't as well known, so it gets overlooked somewhat.
The amount of women on these lists, it's amazing.
Wow, I hadn't even looked at that.
I personally really like The Black Tides of Heaven by Shay Yang. That was really good. I read that a few months ago. I'm glad that's on there.
I haven't read them yet, but they've been on my list.
Yeah. I don't really get the Binti books. I don't really understand it. I mean, I understand it, but I don't understand why people love them so much. But I will read it before the next thing.
Mm-hmm. I think the Binti series will make a lot more sense to some people if you read the entire series in one go. Especially Binti Home is this kind of middle thing. It's the first half of a story that's concluded in the final one, and I did not like it as much until I reread parts of it when I went into the Night Masquerade. But there are definitely parts of that story and just Okorafor's storytelling style that I think just doesn't work with some people. It is very different from what I think of as your traditional Western story or something. And I find that challenging a lot of times too.
Yeah. I think for me, my vote's probably going to come down to, I really did like Down Among the Sticks and Bones. I really did like All Systems Red. And I have to reread, I have to read Black Tides of Heaven and Then There Were None. And I think that would probably help me figure it out a little more. So I'm just a little behind.
I'm definitely going to reread All Systems Red. My first read of it, it was okay. I liked it, but it wasn't like super amazing. I think I might have missed something with that one. I'm going to reread that. I'm going to reread a lot of these things that I didn't really love the first time I read it, because it just might have been my mood at the time.
Yeah, mood, or, you know, not everything's going to work for everyone.
Yeah.
So.
Are we ready for the big one?
The big one. This is the first year where I have already read every single nomination in the novel category, and 4 of my 5 nominations made it. So I think this year I predicted the Hugo nominators' mood. I'm very proud of myself, as you can tell.
Yeah, so we have The Collapsing Empire, New York 2140, Provenance, Raven Stratagem, Six Wakes, and The Stone Sky. Of those, I only haven't read the Kim Stanley Robinson one, which was New York 2140. It's been on my list for a long time. And I haven't read The Collapsing Empire by John Scalzi. So.
Yeah, I was supposed to read New York 2140 like a couple months ago, but then it fell through. But I think that is the only one I haven't read. I read half of the Raven Stratagem. Don't hate me, guys.
No, it's okay. It's great, but that's okay.
I'm gonna retry.
That entire series of books it's like reading Ryan Yemi. Like you are dunked in head first.
Oh yeah.
And you either love that or you don't, because that's an experiential thing. I'm not surprised to see The Stone Sky on here.
Do we want to take bets on whether Jemison will be 3 for 3 this year?
Oh my gosh. I want to, and yet.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance.
Because from what I see, in my head, it comes down to Jemison, Lucky, and Kim Stanley Robinson. Even though I haven't read it, all I've heard is good stuff. And I want to put you and Holly on there, but I think the experience is just too sink or swim.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I loved it, I know it's not for everyone.
I'm super torn between Raven Stratagem, Six Wakes, and The Stone Sky. I think they'll be the ones at the top of my ballot. Maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but while I liked Provenance, I never thought about nominating it.
Yeah,
I
love Lecky, but I just don't. That story isn't a contender in this category for me at all.
I mean, and not to say it's not a good story, but it also struck me as being like very clearly not her best work.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised it was nominated too. I liked it. I thought the character was fantastic, but the actual plot of it just didn't really capture my interest too much. And also, John Scalzi, Collapsing Empire, even though I liked it, I didn't think it was one of his strongest novels. Hopefully the series goes in a better direction. But it was fun, but I'm surprised Catherine Arden's not on there. I thought for sure she'd be on there.
Yeah.
I love Six Wakes. So
I really did like 6 Weeks. I am not a huge Scalzi fan. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Scalzi hasn't been nominated in the past couple of years for a number of reasons. I think he had one year where he didn't have any novels out, so he wasn't eligible. And then he had a couple of years where I think he declined any nominations. He actually asked people to not nominate him. So I think it's kind of been a couple of dry years for Scalzi fans, actually.
He was nominated for Lock-In, wasn't he?
Yes, I think he was nominated for Lock-In. A couple of the Old Man's War books have been nominated. So he has been a favorite on the shortlist in previous years, but not most recently. And I think he's another author who just has a huge fan base, kind of like Shannon McGuire. And I didn't think The Collapsing Empire was his best thing. I really loved some of the Old Man's War books. But the story in this one wasn't quite all there. But I loved the world building. I loved the setup of the plot. It's actually one that I'd like to reread and revisit that because it had some really great moments in it.
When it comes to a lot of these authors, I think that it's just a question of people not having the time to read as much. And so when their favorite authors are putting out new books, those are the books they're going to read. And then those books are the ones that are going to get nominated, you know? I think that's why Anne Leckie's there. New Anne Leckie book, a lot of her fans read it. They might not have had time to read like something else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also think that Provenance specifically is much more accessible than Leckie's other stuff.
I'm so torn on that, though, because I wanted to recommend it to people who wanted to try out Leckie because it's more of a standalone story. But then I realized that a lot of the world building and the whole peace treaty thing with the Presger that happens in ancillary justice and everything, like that's really important to understanding some of the undercurrents in the story. So if you don't know that, then I don't know, it's really held me back from recommending it to people to read first.
Yeah, I don't know that I think it's prohibitive. Like, I think you can still read it without having that. I'm not sure that you get the same experience.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody in the chat read it on its own without reading the Imperial Ratch trilogy, I would love to know if it worked as a standalone for you. I really haven't heard anybody starting with that one first.
And folks are pointing out in the chat that Scalzi is kind of a much more mainstream author.
Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, I do in my head kind of lump him with Brandon Sanderson. Like, I'm likely to see his books anywhere.
He's basically one of the rock star authors. Yeah.
And also I think there's a lot of people when they nominate some of the old boys, they only nominate science fiction stuff for Hugos. They sometimes they don't nominate fantasy things.
Yeah. Did you listen to that Coup Street podcast where they were talking about just that?
Yep, that's why.
Because that was a revelation to me when they were talking about that. You know, I've always felt like the Hugo Awards were historically more science fiction leaning, and the Nebula Awards were a bit more fantasy leaning. Maybe it switched back and forth in years, but you know, Gary K. Wolfe and Jonathan Strawn were talking about that on the Coup Street podcast, and I was like, you're right. There are lots of nominators who will only consider science fiction nominees for this award. And go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if you look at the best novel category, the only one that's really fantasy is The Stone Sky.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Now, The Stone Sky is a little bit science fictional, actually quite a bit science fictional in its world building. And Raven Stratagem, while I view it more as hard SF, believe that Lee has specifically said on their website that magic is actually a component of the world building. So there's some blurring of the lines there as well.
Yeah, it feels much more science fiction, but when you think about the way that their technology is based on the calendrical system that they're using, that is magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a really sciencey magic.
I've heard an interesting explanation for the calendrical heresy thing. I wish I could remember exactly what that explanation, where it came from. It was something to do about worldview and perceiving the universe and stuff. And I wish I could remember where it was. I would share it. It made everything make a bit more sense for me in that world.
Almost a little like the Rise and Fall of Dio, where you have all of these strands and it's the one that is most common across elements that's going to win in your future.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that.
Yeah. So somebody in chat, I think, said 3 for 3 has never happened before. And I think that's true. I think that if Jemison won for The Stone Sky, she would make Hugo history.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of why she said, please don't nominate me in series. Because if people have her in series and in novel, it splits that vote.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I can see it doing the hat trick. Great ending to a great series. So.
I'm a bit split. I sometimes don't want a whole series to basically hog a category for multiple years. I want other things to have a chance. But I have to say that pretty much anything, maybe except for Scalzi's book, could win in this category, and I would be extremely happy. I would really love to be there at the Hugo Awards ceremony if Jemison won, though. That would be awesome.
Joe, we haven't heard from you, man. What are you feeling in this category?
Well, I mean, I've only actually read the one book in this, and that's Raven Stratagem. The rest of them, I want to read nearly all of them. And I haven't, purely because it's getting hold of the books in several cases. They've actually proving slightly difficult. Scalzi, I'm not very knowledgeable on Scalzi. I've read Chet's Poem, which I thought was pretty good. But I'm not in a hurry for that. New York 2140, that's Robinson. I definitely want to read that. But I prefer paperbacks, though. Same as some of the others. I prefer paperbacks in all my books rather than hardbacks. And in the UK, paperbacks are nearly always available much later than hardbacks. So, I mean that's the problem with 6 Weeks. 6 Weeks does not have an ebook either. In the UK, you can only get hardback, nothing else. So it's like hardback or nothing. And the library doesn't have it. So basically, for now, I can't read it.
Shoot.
Yeah, I definitely take for granted the library system in the States compared to other countries and stuff.
Although I do have the entire trilogy by Jemison. So I'm planning. I will be reading that in the next 3 months.
Joe, have you tried to reach out to publishers to see if they'll send you anything?
Not. Well, no, I've never really reached out to any publishers because I'm always wary because my channel's only really small. I mean, I've only got 1,000 people, so I'm always like, well, why some booktubers, they seem to have like a larger Skype account and seem to be able to get hold of things. I'm always a bit like, well, I've got a Skype account to be able to sort of request these things. I don't know, I'm always a bit wary.
I should give it a try anyways, dude.
Yeah.
I think you could. I mean, I've seen quite a few booktubers that don't have even 1,000 subscribers that do get books, physical books from publishers. So I would say try it. I think it is surprisingly easier to do. I say that I am extremely anxious about actually sending publishers emails asking for things. The worst they can say is no, sorry.
One book on here that I've no interest in reading, unfortunately, because of a previous is Unlucky's one, because I did not like Ancillary Justice at all. I just felt, I mean, I've said this before, but I felt like the start of a book, and then somebody just got literally like a pair of scissors and just chopped the book, and then that was it. And I just got into the book, and then it finished. I was like, oh, okay, that's over. So I never got them books for the first one. Maybe if I read the second, it might help. I don't know.
The Imperial Wretch series is not for everybody. I know some people have bounced off it really hard. So I think Bree needs to go.
Yep,
soon.
I do. Yeah, got an appointment in like 30 minutes, so okay. I have to head out.
Yeah, we're basically at the end of all the shortlist categories, so I think we're probably close to wrapping up if nobody has any other major thoughts to share. If anybody in the chat has final things to say.
Okay. While you guys do that, I'm going to scoot, but thank you for having me on. Bye.
It was great to talk to you again.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say.
Yeah.
Had a good time talking about these nominees.
Mm-hmm. I think overall it's it's a solid shortlist, and I will be very curious to see the long list for this year as well. But I feel like there's very little to go wrong no matter what wins.
Someone in chat asked what was consensus for best novel, what do we think will win? I don't know.
I think if we were betting hard money, we'd probably say The Stone Sky.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say that too. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone else did.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it could go to pretty much anybody in this category. It's so split between really popular, long-established authors with fan bases and some really, really strong books and a few that have just been, standout successes. So it could be anything, which makes it kind of exciting to actually be there at the ceremony. We have no clue what's actually going to happen.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised Yoon Ha Lee would win. So many people like those books.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was like maybe the runner-up last year. I don't know. I can't remember the actual
number. I can't remember either, but
I think that he had a big following last year, and maybe that following will come into this year with this new book. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, is that it? Are we done?
I think so. Thanks so much for inviting me, Rachel. I appreciate it.
I'm glad everybody could come do this. So yeah.
I'm really looking forward to meeting the U2 in August finally.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. So,
Rachel, remember, I'm still hoping for cookies or muffins. I don't know whether you can. I don't know whether you can exactly bring them on the plane with you though over Tuesday and Thursday. That might be.
I have no idea.
I don't know whether they'll actually be eatable though, because it might be a bit warm and squishy.
I don't know.
If it's possible, I'm hoping for cookies.
I will look into it. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody who tuned in to watch us and everybody who talked to us in the chat. Thank you to Paul and Joe and Bree, who's no longer with us. It was lovely talking to you guys. We got to do this again soon. So with that, I will say bye and we will go offline.
Bye.
Come on.